Let's see if this works. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hey, there we go.
Working?
It is
There we
working.
go.
Yeah, second time around. We did say we got it wrong, to be fair, or something.
It's all
All good?
good.
All good?
Yep, all good.
I guess you could intro yourself. You'll do a better job than me.
Sounds good. I'm Jake Reed. I am the head recruiting coordinator and assistant cross country and track coach at NAU. That's Northern Arizona and Flagstaff.
Great hair, by the way. I didn't realize your hair that was that good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Right, do you want to jump straight in with the questions?
Sounds good.
Okay, first one is, what is the typical recruitment timeline for NAU?
We start basically June 15th of your junior year as soon as that window opens, as soon as we're allowed to contact. So a lot of that is just kind of making list of the sophomores that we're interested in and just kind of picking through that. And June 15th, we'll start sending out some messages and we'll work from there. That doesn't mean that everyone's process starts June 15th, but yeah, we definitely hit the ground running.
Okay, I'll go into another one, which is a very obvious question. What are your recruitment standards?
Standards. I love that question. It's not, I wouldn't say we have a specific standard. We don't have like this timesheet up on the board, like you have to run X or Y. A big thing to us is can you contribute, and contribution is, different. For cross country, like we definitely want to make sure the athletes we're recruiting have the potential to contribute within a year or two of development at the national level. We want to be one of the best teams in the nation. So we're going to recruit talent that we feel like can contribute at that level. And a lot of that's not just time, it's more of like, how are you faring in some of the big competitions you're performing at? Everyone can run a time. Any high schooler can go to Arcadia and get in a line and run a really fast 2 mile, but like, how are you competing at your state meet, the national meet, the NXN, international recruits? How are you faring at your big competitions? And we really look for that too.
Okay. When and what are you normally evaluating with athletes early on as well? I know you sort of semi-answered that question already, but what are
Yeah.
you looking for?
Yeah, like first and foremost, like obviously times are going to stick out. So the evaluation of that is like, are you performing at a level that shows that, you have the potential to be a top 25, top 30 US kid in the country, or an international that is at that level or better. So that those times kind of stick out. And then when we're looking through those recruits, I'm looking at performances at those different competitions and figuring out like who's a competitor. And then after that, it's having those conversations and figuring out who's going to be a good fit at NAU. Culture is really important to us, so we're not just going to take the kid that runs fast. Like we want to build a strong culture here, and team is of the utmost importance.
Okay, awesome. When would you recommend that a kid starts contacting coaches?
I would say as soon as possible. I think kids often think that they're going to wait to run this fast time or have this placement at this meet and it's going to attract a coach. We're never going to get annoyed if you contact us early, put yourself on our radar, and maybe we're not interested. Maybe we do tell you like, hey, like you're not quite there yet. Keep us updated and your results will follow along. And you reach back out later to let us know like, hey, I've made some, big improvements. Don't get offended if we tell you like, hey, we don't have a roster spot right now. This is what we're looking for. Hopefully that just drives you to get better, or it drives you to look at other places that might be a better fit for you too. And there's no hard feelings there. Reach out early and often, I would say.
Okay. A question that I got a lot, which 8 times actually. What are you looking for in the transfer portal? All of them were from kids that were in it. So
Yeah, and I know we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's really hard at this level because I'm sitting here and I might have, 7 to 10 guys that I feel like with good summers and good development would have a chance to impact, even possibly be an All-American in cross country. Unfortunately, in the portal, we're not looking to necessarily just add another guy like that. We have those guys. So the transfer portal for us is looking for someone who's going to make an immediate impact, where we know they're going to come in. They are going to be in our top, like, 3 to 4 athletes on the team. They're going to bolster this year's performance. It's more of an immediate impact. We're not looking in the portal for potential. We're not looking in the portal for a guy that we're going to develop to the level we need them to be at. And again, it's going to be fit. It's going to be not only can they help at that level, can they immediately contribute, but how do they fit with the culture of our team, the program, and why NAU, why Flagstaff to you?
So a guy going in the portal, what sort of 5, 10K time would you flag as like, okay, that's worth a conversation?
Oof. Yeah, I think NCAA is getting super competitive. It's really hard. And a big emphasis at NAU is cross country. So I think a
Mhm.
lot of people want to shoot us their track times, and I've had a lot of kids email me like some great track performances. But the first thing we do is we go to TFers and we're like, hey, how'd you perform in cross country? Like, where are you at? And we're looking for someone that's been an All American. Like, have you been an All American in cross country? Or have you had a solid cross country season and made some big jumps in the track season? Specific times, I don't know, maybe 13:30s in the 5K, like 28 lows in the 10K, something like that. But again, you got to have that. You got to have that cross country piece to go along with it. We're not looking for someone just to run fast on the track. We want someone that's going to impact our cross country program, unless it's a grad transfer that might only have track eligibility left.
Are visits more important for coaches or more important for athletes?
I think they're equally important. I know over the phone, coaches and athletes, we're only going to get the best, the best of that person. They're going to tell a story. The coach is going to tell a story. Athlete's going to tell a story. I feel like the visits, when those layers get peeled back, they get to spend a lot of time with the team. And even for the coaches, it's really important for us, for them to spend a lot of time with the team, because we're going back to our team and we're trying to ask, like, who would be a good fit at NAU? What is this kid like? We're only hearing the best of this kid. What are you experiencing? And I think it's super important for us to get the feedback of our own athletes, to know if they're going to be a good fit in our program.
Okay, excellent. Do you assess potential, and if so, how?
Absolutely. I think training age is really important. So talking to kids, I think kids get caught up a lot in time, and yeah, time is relevant. But just to give some examples, if you have two guys that have run like 850 in the 2 mile, I'm absolutely way more excited for a kid that's only been training for a year or two rather than the kid that's been grinding since seventh or eighth grade. That doesn't mean I don't value the kid that's put in the hard work, or has been really disciplined and gotten himself to where he is. Doesn't mean I don't think he can improve, but there is an excitement factor. The kid's a little undertrained. And then obviously form and efficiency. One of the first things I do is go to something like Instagram, the platform. I look up the kid. I try to find things they're tagged in, videos they're tagged in. I'm watching their running economy, like looking at them move, their stride efficiency, limiting factors. I'm looking at speed development, like where are they at? Like kid that might run a low 4 minute, mile, but can only run like a 157, 155 or something in the 800. Maybe a little concerning for some limiting factors. They don't all have to be blazing fast, but we're kind of evaluating on that. Like what's the upside there? How are we moving? What's our speed like? And what's your training age? Those are three things that I really look at.
Yeah, how much would you value speed? Because that's an interesting
Um,
one. 'Cause it varies a lot from coach to coach.
it really does, and a lot of that comes to do with the conversation. I want to look at their efficiency running, when I'm watching them in videos. If there's, just some biomechanical issues, then I have some reservation. If I don't see that and they're not fast, then a lot comes in the questions. How much have you worked on speed development? I know we talked a little bit about, maybe kids that are self-coached and are just hammering out volume and thresholds, and they've never done any max speed development or anything of that nature. And I know that in our program we can definitely enhance that, and it's not as much of a concern. But when I talk to kids and they come from a little bit more speed background and they're still running like a 53, 54 second 400, 155, I'm like, ooh, that's a little scary. So yeah, a lot of that's just the conversation and figuring out where they're at in their development.
Yeah, I agree because you're going to hit that ceiling obviously a lot earlier than maybe another kid with a little bit more speed there. What this is a good question that we got a couple of times. What's the big? Because obviously you're a huge program, particularly on the distance side. It's not really much bigger. What would be the biggest difference between how you guys operate compared to a mid-major, and also expectations with the incoming class as well?
I think being in flag first and foremost, I don't think you can get a better place in the world to train. I think the ability to operate and what we have, the resources, and our resources don't just go to what every, Power Four school might have. Everyone can say facilities. You can't replicate Flagstaff. Facilities is one thing, and I feel like we have, state-of-the-art facilities. We got, the every bell and whistle you can imagine. Your 300-meter indoor track, nice outdoor track. You got your altitude room with your wood weight treadmills, all the glitz and glam there. But honestly, we don't. That's not what we sell. We sell here. It's 7,000 feet, pristine trails, beautiful weather, access to dip down to lower elevation very quickly when needed. Training year round here is phenomenal. And when you can drive 30 to 45 minutes and change your weather and your environment very quickly, I mean, you don't get many altitude schools that can do that either. So I think it's those resources and then how much the university is willing to invest in being at this level. I know most institutions are going to play second fiddle to football or basketball or some of your revenue sports, and the support our university gives us and provides us is, like none other. And that's not even just the support financially; that's a huge aspect of it. But it's, when you walk into NAU, you walk into athletic facilities, you really see that cross country and track and field are at the forefront, and they're a flagship program here, and they're a flagship in the community. And when you say you're a part of NAU, cross country or track and field in the community and at school, it's like you're a football superstar. It's like you made the NFL. Like you're looked at differently.
Okay, awesome. I think you've explained this brilliantly. Can you explain how the NCAA rules have sort of affected, or you think could affect, the recruitment timeline moving forwards?
Yeah, I think a lot of these kids currently in the system and kids incoming are really excited about this 5 for 5, coming down the way, and how this gets implemented, how quickly, the nuances of it. We don't know that. But at the same time, when I'm looking at these new rules coming down the pipeline, I think it's going to have some limiting factors to it. So if everyone has 5 years of eligibility and we have 17 roster spots to fill, you just do the math there. There's no more redshirting. There's no reason to sit out a season. You're just essentially throwing away a season. I understand why you would do that if you're not ready to compete and you need development. But most kids are going to want to use that eligibility, but that only leaves you about four per class, and you're still over the roster limit. And now, you can get rostered for track and field, but you're going to be limited to 8 hours of practice. And we're a school, we really value our commitment to individuals. So if we commit to you, we're committing to you for your duration of time being here, regardless of, kind of how you perform, as long as you're doing everything that's asked of you and everything we've agreed upon. We're not going to pull that rug out from underneath you. But with that, imagine what that does to a freshman recruiting class if I'm only recruiting four individuals, and that's, for 5 years. And that's going to be the case at a lot of programs like ours. And I think there's going to be a big trickle effect. And there's going to be some D2s, D3 schools that I think the level of competition is just going to enhance. And then you look at the international game and a lot of the international athletes looking to come over and take advantage of the U.S. system. That's also taking opportunity. So I think opportunity is just going to get harder and harder to come by as we go with these new rules.
Okay, excellent. This is quite a good question. We've got a couple of times. What do you want to see from an email from a kid? What information do you want included in it?
Yeah. Please don't send emails that say, "What's up, coach?" We get a few of those. I'm a pretty relaxed guy. I'm probably one of the only guys who might laugh at it and, maybe still reply to you. But professionalism is huge. I think a big part, don't be afraid to share times, performances, links to results. I think some kids are a little reserved with that and try to introduce themselves and they're not a little bit more forefront. It
Hmm.
just makes the coach do 10 minutes of extra work that's unneeded and almost kind of annoying. But like, just be forefront, like who you are, where you're at, how long you've been running for, and what are your current performances. Don't project. When you get kids on there that says, "Hey, I've run, a 4:15 in the mile, but I really feel like I'm going to go 4:03 this year." Like that's awesome, but that doesn't mean anything to any of these coaches and sometimes makes you look silly. If anything, tell us the story about, your training age, how long you've been going at this, and leave your times alone. We can evaluate that stuff and we can look at that. And I think most coaches out there will at least, let you know where we're at in the process.
Okay, excellent. Red flags. It's always a common question. What would be something or things that you would see where you think, okay, we cannot recruit this kid?
That's a challenging one because you meet those at all different points in the recruiting process. So again, like I, just stated one, when kids are telling you they're going to run 10 to 15 seconds faster, not only is it, probably outlandish, but I always think about coaching that athlete too. And I think that athlete's probably never going to be satisfied with where they're at because they're always going to think they're that much faster than what they really are. That's a big red flag to me. Don't project that you're going to do something big. Just be happy with where you're at and train at the level you're at and keep working to develop. And a big one for us when I talk about fit at NAU is culture. I love kids that talk about their team. I love kids that talk about how much that means to them and, competing with a team, whether it's their current team because they're on a good team or the excitement to compete for a program and for a team and accomplish something as a team. Because at the end of the day, this is a journey and we want to be on a journey together and we want to support each other through this, coaches, athletes, and your teammates. So I think when I hear kids just talk about themselves constantly, and never talk about what they want out of their experience and the team and how important that is to them. That's a red flag to me. Is this individual is not going to be very invested in the program? They're invested for themselves.
Okay, excellent. Do you look at more times or racecraft? What's more important to you?
I think the time will initially get you maybe interest, but after that point, we're looking at how you're performing at those big races. Because oftentimes we'll see stuff midway through the year where these kids run really fast, whether it's cross country or track, maybe even run a blazing fast time at a low level meet. And you get a little bit excited about that, but we're more looking at is like, okay, how did you compete at those national meets? Like, how did you compete at some big invitational? It's not a time trial. Because time trialing is great, but it's another thing to see what type of competitor they are and how they're performing at those big meets. And if we're down to 5 or 6 guys for like 3 slots, like that's going to be one of those factors is how are you performing, especially if it's a really tough decision in which direction we're going.
Okay, excellent. Can you run through, so when a kid reaches out and you're sort of recruiting them and it's someone that you end up signing, can you run through the chronology of like when they would apply, when you'd expect them to do that, what you kind of need through the process from sort of, I guess, point of contact to point of signing? What are you doing?
Yeah, so obviously recruiting timeline is really strung out nowadays. So if we're
Yeah.
allowed to start that, recruiting process going into your junior year that summer,
Mhm.
a lot of times we're extending offers that junior year after you visited, and when we do that, there's not a lot that you really can do. You're almost it's that verbal commitment. We're talking to you about what we can offer, where we're at in the process, but we can't officially send those forms over. So a lot of times, we're making a commitment to you verbally, you're accepting a verbal commitment, and then you're sitting there, you're waiting for the application period to open. I know every university is going to be different of when that application period
Mhm.
opens. And once that opens, for most institutions, that's going to be going into their senior year. When that opens, we're going to encourage you, hey, apply. We already know you're going to get accepted, or we wouldn't have offered you that scholarship. And then as soon as the signing period opens, we'll send you over basically the offer in written form. you'll sign that. And I always have my compliance works, hand in hand with me, and our compliance team is awesome, and they'll give you a student checklist. And I pass that along, and I'm just calling the kids, walking through that process, signing your forms. If you're an international student, you got to get all your ducks in a row. There's certain requirements there, especially with like, insurance, visa, like you got to apply for those things. We got to make sure that you're cleared. You got to get clear of the NCAA clearinghouse. You got to make sure you go through that process. But we have a checklist that I just kind of check in one by one, make sure you've done the due diligence and those factors. And then we're talking with compliance to make sure it's cleared. But the hard part is when kids wait and all of a sudden we might make an offer January or February of senior year. I've seen this, but they haven't done anything and they get backed up and they don't get their stuff in time and it's a scramble in the summer and it just is really stressful. And we typically always are able to get everything cleared, but you want to be on the forefront of that. You want to make sure that you're following that. And I think almost every university and good coach out there has a good checklist for you to just follow step by step.
Okay, excellent. Would you recommend a kid reach out on WhatsApp, email, or Instagram DM to a coach?
Um, to me, the professional way is email.
Hmm.
Let us do some due diligence. Provide your phone number, provide your WhatsApp number, provide a social media link so we can follow you. I think that's great, but I think a formal email is awesome because I think every coach in the country has a notification when they get an email.
Hmm.
And trust me, if you've reached that standard, any good recruiting coordinator is probably going to contact you within 24 to 48 hours if
Hmm.
you're on their radar. And if not, you're probably going to get an email reply within a week or two letting you know like where we're at in the process. You're right, it might not be right away, especially if you're not quite there yet. But I think an email is the best first step. But don't hesitate if you struggle with the email or can't find something, don't say, well, I couldn't find their email. Like, yeah, if you have another form of access, communication is always the most important thing. How to communicate, I would say, is like a little bit of the secondary.
Awesome. What would be the one bit of advice you'd give to an international kid looking to come into the US?
Ooh, I would say, start the process early, because you're changing your world. And finding the right fit can be challenging. I would say at least have, 5 or 6 conversations. Like I always tell kids, even if they talk to me first and they're head and shoulders like over the moon about NAU and Flagstaff's the dream, like talk to a couple other coaches too. Like we want you to be excited after you know all the options out there, not just the one option. And I would say have those conversations early, talk to 5 or 6 coaches because you're going to find things that you want to ask other coaches just by having those conversations. And take at least the time, even if it's not a real visit. I know sometimes with internationals, depending on where you're at, it may be really hard to do all the domestic visits, but do the due diligence in the places that you're truly interested in. At least take some like time to research it, virtual visit if you have to, if you can't be there on foot, but at least do a few of those before you limit your options.
Okay, excellent. One other thing, some sort of an international end. What level of knowledge would you expect from them when they first reach out? So, would you want them to have a pretty clear idea in terms of like the NCAA eligibility process? Would you be fine with a kid that has absolutely no idea at all? Where would you kind of fall into that category? I know some coaches kind of won't entertain a kid unless they've not done some pretty decent prior knowledge. So, where would you kind of describe you and NAU there?
I mean, I think with the resources we have and my ability to really focus on that, I don't get too caught up in it. Like I
Yeah.
can walk kids through it. Like obviously it's preferable for them to have done their homework. I would encourage all international kids, do your homework on what it takes to compete at each level. Don't don't pigeonhole yourself. I think the ones that are sad to me, whether it's an American or an international, is I see some pretty good athletes that'll reach out and say, "Hey, I really, this is my dream school. This is the place I want to be," but realistically, they're not there and they have no knowledge of the NCAA. They don't realize that their time might not even make like a Division III national meet, and they're asking to, a scholarship. And the reality is like know your worth. do some education on what your value is, and make sure you're reaching out to programs that you really know you can contribute to and that you hold value for them.
Okay, excellent. Really common, I'll call it, I guess, a concern is that a big program is going to be ruthless and it's going to be super high volume and kind of thrown into the mixer kind of style. How would you describe the training approach of NAU?
We're going to meet you right where you're at. It's not like that at all. We know we're welcoming in a lot of new variables into your life, especially being at 7,000 feet. We can't expect you to do more than you've ever done when you're walking into an environment that's completely different. I do think there are programs out there like that. I actually, that's one thing I'm in favor with this 5 for 5, the 17 roster spots. I think it's going to weed out a lot of those programs that just recruit in masses, throw the kids through the ringer and just see what comes out on the other side. I don't know how you're going to do that anymore because
Yeah.
you're going to have to be not only a good recruiter, but you're going to have to be a good coach. You're going to have to develop the athlete because if you're only able to bring in 4 to 5 athletes a year, you can't make mistakes anymore, and you can't afford to just make kids run 100 miles a week and see who's good. It's going to be a lot more difficult. And if that does happen, you're going to see a really high transfer rate at that university, and it's going to become really noticeable. So yeah, I think there is a common misconception of that because I know a lot of great coaches in NCAA, a lot of great programs, and I think the ones that have done that have really given us a bad rap. But I think if you talk to any of our international students that have come through here, and a lot of them have been, grad transfers from other institutions, they all say like the level of care here, not even care for the athlete, but care for the person, the individual is really high. And we really value you and we want you to grow as an individual, not just as an athlete in your performance.
Yeah, well, you can tell because the transfer rate is obviously a huge
Yep.
indicator. I think even I'd say with you guys, where your recruitment process is quite relaxed, I think it's quite an obvious. I wouldn't call it like a very direct red flag, but if you're getting an absolute ton of pressure super early on to
Yep.
commit somewhere, it's probably a bit of an indicator of what the experience is going to be potentially like when you go through the door. And I think doubly if you now moving forwards, it looks like it's only going to be a one-time transfer at the undergrad level. It's probably hard to take that level of risk
Yep.
going into a program where that's probably the likely outcome. Not that you should ever take that risk in the
Absolutely.
first place anyway, but okay, a fun one. 14:10 5K lad, great attitude, really good kid. 13:50 lad, but a bit of a challenging individual to deal with. Which one you taking and why?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say it depends on what the challenges are.
Okay.
But obviously that 14-10 kid is going to have a little leg up, just from the aspect of, if you have 17 guys on the roster and 5 people are contributing, the last thing we want to do is bring a kid into the program that's going to bring down the level of other people around him. If that kid doesn't quite make it performance wise to being a big hitter and being an All-American or contributing to the top 5, but he's an awesome cultural piece for us. If we had room on the roster, I would rather take a flyer on that kid than, you know, pick up a 1350 kid with
Mhm.
problems.
Okay, excellent. And one for the eight boys, because I had a lot of questions. How do you recruit 100-meter runners? Is that something where you're going to put like a decent couple bullets towards it, or is it really just kind of you? Yeah, where are you sort of at with the kind of mid-distance events?
That's actually a constant conversation right now. I feel like with the new rules, you might see NAU change a little approach a little bit on that.
Hmm.
I know right now when you only have 17 roster spots for cross country, we've talked about the idea of like do you add an 800-meter distance spectrum kid, a kid that's like more of an 815, but definitely isn't going to run cross country. Do you take a flyer on one or two of those kids and not have them on the cross roster, but just be track athletes and be 800 meters specific? I think internationally, kids are a little more open to that. I think American culture and American cross country and how fun that is when you're in high school and how that's carried over. I don't see a lot of top level 800-meter kids being super interested in being told, hey, come here, but like you'll never run cross country. You're going to be track only. There will be a few of those kids out there. But yeah, I think it's a challenge, but we've talked about that because we don't want to we don't want to take up one of our 17 for cross country and a kid that we feel like may never contribute in cross country. We want the Colin Solomon type, the kid
Yeah.
that's going to come in and have that 800 to 10K range, but those are not easily found.
That's so
But
rare. I mean, how many
yeah,
kids can go around like a low 140? I mean, probably you need them, I guess, what showing they can develop into being a low 146 guy, I
yep,
guess, but
yep,
then can contribute over the 10K. I mean,
yep.
I've not had any yet that can do that. So,
Very, very few kids
yeah,
can do that. So,
yeah.
yeah, and that's something we're talking about and looking into. And we're not opposed to, if we have an 800, 1500 meter kid that would just run track, we're not opposed to entertaining the idea or their philosophy behind that. But it would be different for NAU. We've never done that in the past. We've always tried to recruit the kid that at least can compete in cross country, even if they're not like a heavy contributor.
Okay. What would you tell, because I get this all the time, what would you tell 800-meter kids that don't want to touch cross at all? Are like, no way, not doing it. What would be your input towards them?
Look at Tor Hotong Davidson's career with me, because he told me that his freshman year, and he kind of fought me on that, fought me on mileage, and I don't think I've ever had an 800-meter kid. I'm not saying there's not, but most of the 800-meter kids that are gonna develop and do really well, they're either going to be training with the sprint coach already and be jumping up from the 400 and not be with the distance people at all,
Yeah.
or they're going to be kids that buy into cross country and they buy into a fall of aerobic development. And the aerobic development is not going to kill your speed. It's only going to kill your speed if you don't work on your speed. But if you continue to work on your speed while developing aerobically, you're not going to lose it. And I think that's one of the biggest common misconceptions with high school kids. They feel like if they run too much volume or if they, do a bunch of threshold work, that all of a sudden they're just going to become slower. And that may be the case. They may have experienced that, but that's probably because they weren't doing max speed development along with that. They weren't training the neuromuscular system along with training the aerobic system. And we always say, like, we phases of training. It's not like you train one for a really long period of time, then move to the next for a really long period of time. No, you're constantly training everything, and you're just changing the percentage at which you're training each energy system. And I think kids need to understand that. Like, you need the aerobic development for long-term growth.
Yeah, I was never that good, but I mean, I went from 152 to 148 my first year in the US just purely off of being a more aerobically developed.
Yep.
That was literally
Yep.
the only difference, and it was the biggest jump I made in my life. It was just being a little bit more bought into like okay, tempo work, etc. Just touch that energy
Yep.
system a bit more. Um, Last question: what's the standard week for an NAU athlete? What are they up to?
So just an outline of a standard week.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think, breaking it down, our week, one nice thing is it stays the same all the way through the year.
Hmm.
So it's not like, oh, we're in cross country season, this is the week, then we're in indoor, then we're in outdoor. The emphasis of what workouts we'll do will change. But we always have one practice a day. We don't overwhelm your time. You might double, but a lot of those are OYO, like on your own type runs. So just a quick outline, like Monday mornings, or sorry, Monday afternoons, we'll meet for a weight session. We'll do a mental performance coaching session with Shannon Thompson. She's our mental performance coach. She's awesome, works with our athletes all year round. We'll work with her. Yeah, is that no, that's Wednesday afternoon. Sorry, I confused this. Mondays we'll do weights and then we'll do speed development. Monday you'll do a run in the morning on your own. Tuesday we'll do a workout. Sometimes it'll be morning, sometimes it'll be afternoon, but you'll find that out a week ahead of time, just in terms of like what we're planning. Wednesdays we'll do a 3/4 long run, just a midweek long run. Thursdays we'll have practice in the morning. You'll finish your run. We'll do some speed development. And like I said, Wednesday afternoon mirrors the Monday afternoon. We do weights and we're working with Shannon Thompson, our mental performance coach. Thursdays run, speed development in the morning. Friday workout. Again, that could be morning or afternoon, evening. A lot of times we'll slip down to Cottonwood, during the track season. That's a
Yeah.
really fun avenue, 30, 45 minutes south of us. Drop 3,000 feet, enjoy some warmer weather, enjoy, run a little bit faster at lower level altitude. We love going down there. It's a fun trip for us. and then Saturday morning long runs. Sundays Oyo. A lot of kids take the day off. Some kids run a little bit, but that's the structure of the week. Volume will be differentiated per kid. Workouts will be tweaked. Lifting will be tweaked between what type of athlete you are. Not necessarily mid and distance, but what type of strength development do you need? And we have a great strength and conditioning coach we work with, and then our trainer is phenomenal, and he'll work with you daily. And yeah, prehab, rehab, all of that stuff. We encourage the athletes to be proactive in that setting.
Top man. Thanks for this, mate. Where would you recommend kids contact you? Email, Instagram?
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
I think email is probably the easiest. Again, if you struggle with it, can't find my email on the website, it's there. But if you're struggling with it, don't hesitate to send me a DM. I'm not social media savvy, so sometimes if you're one of those weird private ones and they send in a different request box, sometimes I don't see it for a couple of weeks and it's frustrating. So definitely email's the easiest. But yeah, if you're interested, please feel free to reach out. I'll get back to you.
We kind of showed that, didn't we? Taking 15 minutes to get the live working. So
Yeah, yeah.
maybe try the email. Okay, top man. Really appreciate it, mate. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
All right,
Appreciate
see you
it.
in a bit. Yeah, cheers, mate.
See ya.
Bye. Bye.